Hi everyone. This is just a review for your exam of the lymphatic system and immunity chapter 14. Um, so remember that the main functions of the lymphatic system are to return tissue fluid to the blood, maintain blood volume, and then also to protect the body against pathogens like bacteria or viruses and other foreign material that can hurt you. It can be short or long term. Um, so there are many kind of parts of the lymphatic system. It goes throughout your body, but we break it down into a few main segments. The lymphatic tissue, though, consists mainly of lymphocytes, so that would be your T cells and your B cells, and then monocytes, which for our purposes we can kind of consider being the same as macrophages. Um, and they work in a supportive network of connective tissue. Uh, there, uh, there are stem cells for lymphocytes, again, those T cells and B cells. And then lymphocytes can mature and become more active. The locations are the lymph nodes and then the smaller lymph nodules, as well as the spleen, which is the largest of the lymphatic tissue or lymphatic organs, and then the thymus gland, which is a very specialized uh, lymphatic tissue that sits on the heart. So don't forget that lymph is the name that we give for the tissue fluid that enters the lymph capillaries or the lymphatic uh, system. The lymph is similar to plasma in a way, uh, but its main difference is that it contains more white blood cells and has less protein. The main thing that I want you to know is that the lymphatic system is focused on immunity, right? And so that's why you see more white blood cells in it. And then lymph has to be returned back to the blood. Um, so, by the way, we didn't have a chance to look at what lymphatic fluid looks like in the body. So, lymph is this white, kind of milky substance that circulates throughout your body. It's kind of thinner than milk, but it's white. And if it helps you remember, the white having to do with white blood cells. But this is lymph, right? It looks very different from blood, which has that red color. But this is what it looks like. And here is just a general picture of your lymphatic vessels and system. You can see all the different kind of lymph nodes and lymph nodules that they tried to show throughout the system. But you can see that the spleen is by far the largest um, lymphatic organ. And then we have some specific nodes that we'll talk about in a second that are important for us clinically. And we'll get into that just in a second. But as far as emptying the lymphatic fluid, that white fluid, a lymph, back into the blood, all of it ends up into basically one vein. They're named the same. It's just one on the left and one on the right, and those are your subclavian veins. Um, so they just all of that fluid ends up circulating back to the blood, uh, and then uh, and then it will end up rejoining all the rest of your body. Um, and that's what it says here, right? So remember that the subclavian veins are the ones that the lymph empties into, and the veins end up emptying uh, back into the heart, and then the heart will circulate this lymph, or this blood, I should say. The lymph, what was lymph, is now mixed with blood, um, and then it circulates throughout the body. So Lymph nodes are masses of lymphatic tissue. They're really the centers for where we get uh, a response from our immune system, and that's why they're located throughout the body, uh, so that no matter where you are in the body, there's usually a lymph node nearby, or a set of them nearby. Uh, and they're located in these groups along the pathway of the lymph vessels. And within the lymph, as it flows through the nodes, the bacteria can be phagocytized. Remember, that means to be eaten and destroyed. Remember, I said that antibodies are produced against the bacteria, which the antibodies will attach to bacteria and make them tastier for the whichever cell is eating up the bacteria from our immune system. It can be a macrophage, and it can be other cells as well. Um, but the major lymph nodes that we care about, they're clinically, are the cervical lymph nodes, the axillary lymph nodes, and the inguinal lymph nodes, which we'll look at just here. So here are the cervical lymph nodes, right? Here are the axillary lymph nodes, the cervical, referring to the where your neck. These are your neck. It has the um, cervical vertebrae, and that's where these get their name. And then we have axillary, which is another name for armpit, and they're on both sides. This is just showing one side. This would be this person's left axillary nodes, but just know the axillary nodes. And then at the bottom here, uh, I highlighted the inguinal nodes, which are in the like crotch or groin area. So in addition, I just wanted to point out to segue into the next idea that, as mentioned before, the spleen, if you look at the size of these nodes, these collections of lymphatic tissue, the spleen is much bigger, and like I said, it's the largest uh, lymphatic organ. So again, spleen is the largest lymphatic organ. Um, it As a fetus, it has a very specialized role uh, for a for a period of time where it produces red blood cells. But after you're born, it contains all the different components of our immune system. So B cells and T cells, the lymphocytes, as well as macrophages and monocytes, which will go through that phagocytosis, that bacterial eating. Uh, and It's also, though, unique in that, like, because our lymph nodes aren't big enough for this. But because the spleen is so big, it's has the space to be able to break down and recycle old red blood cells. So red blood cells only live around 120 days. Um, but just know that the spleen is where those red blood cells will get those old red blood cells will get broken down when they're no longer functioning properly and they can't carry oxygen anymore. And then their parts will get recycled. But that all happens in the spleen in addition to uh, fighting off infection. And so here's another picture. I think this does a better job just showing you the size difference. So here's the size of the spleen, right, versus these tiny little nodes, lymph nodes. Um, so immunity is the definition is the ability to destroy foreign antigens. So basically, fighting off infection, uh, and antigens are markers that are typically on the surface of a cell, um, and your immune system is fighting off uh, typically bacteria, uh, which have what are called foreign antigens, meaning they're not you, and the immune system will see that it's not you and start attacking it in these lymph nodes. Um, your cells, your body cells have antigens as well. They're known as self-antigens. And as an extra piece of information that we did talk about in class, but won't be on the exam, the if you start attacking, or when the body starts attacking your own antigen, so your own cells, that's known as an autoimmune disease. Um, so things like rheumatoid arthritis, um, and there are many other autoimmune diseases where your immune system gets confused, and instead of fighting off bacteria, it will actually start trying to fight off your own cells in different parts of your body. But anyway, that will become important in pharmacology, especially when we talk about autoimmune diseases, and uh, the drugs we give for that. Um, so innate immunity, right, is something that's we can break it down into innate and adaptive. Um, Innate is something that's just there. It is non-specific. The responses are always the same. It doesn't create any kind of memory, and it does not become more efficient with repeated exposure. Right? That's all of these are really to contrast it, the difference between this and adaptive immunity, where there is memory and all this other stuff, it does become more efficient. A great example that we kind of take for granted is the barrier of the skin. So the skin is with us from birth, and it is part of the innate immunity. We have it. It doesn't change based on what's uh, going on from an immune standpoint. And we'll see in a second, there's bacteria on all of on our skin all the time. And so the skin has to be like air, has to be better than airtight. So it protects us from infection, like getting into our body, into our blood, or into our tissues. Um, there are also defensive cells. We talked about specifically like the Langerhans cell, which is right under the skin, or in the skin, but right under the surface of the skin. Uh, and there are also chemical defenses. So in inflammation, um, there's an inflammatory response that uses a bunch of chemicals to try and fight off, uh, try and destroy bacteria, but it's the same everywhere in the body and it never changes throughout your life. It's the same chemicals. So this is just a picture showing you what I was just talking about, that we have, like, these are the bacteria again, and this is kind of underselling it, but there are layers of bacteria on the surface of our skin, and that's why when you get a wound, the problem can be twofold. You have a wound, so you have to take care of that, but also it's these bacteria that are fine living on the top of your skin, but once the skin is broken, these bacteria can live in that broken skin. So, if you get like a cut and it gets infected, it's really usually these bacteria that are normally living on your skin that get in there. So remember that your skin is very important as a barrier to entry to your body, right, for infection. And then the other side of that is the adaptive immunity, uh, and this is very specific. It may involve antibody production. It does create memory in the form of memory B cells. It often becomes more efficient with repeated exposure. That's also kind of it's due to a bunch of things, but the main one that we talked about was the formation of memory B cells. So after you form memory B cells, the next time you see that same uh, bacteria, like if you get a flu shot, a vaccine, that memory B cell will be alive and well and waiting, and then it will start a cascade, a series of events leading to a faster immune response. And it involves T cells, B cells, and macrophages. Um, And we can also break adaptive immunity down into two different mechanisms, cellular, so cell-mediated, and antibody-mediated. But these are usually happening in real life at the same time. So for most things, most infections, we have both acting. Um, so remember that cell-mediated doesn't involve antibodies by its name, and it's most effective in targeting uh, pathogens within the cell, as well as possibly cancerous cells. And these are the different players that are involved. For antibody-mediated immunity, it involves antibody production, and it's effective against pathogens and foreign cells. Um, so, the big players that are important are for antibody-mediated immunity are memory B cells, which remember past infections or a vaccine in case of modern day medicine. And then the other version of B cells are the plasma B cells. So this could say plasma B cells. So I want you to remember, memory B cells. Remember, um, what you've either been infected with or a vaccine. And then plasma B cells are the other type of B cell that are a factory for producing these antibodies. Um, so here's these antibodies are produced by plasma B cells, and each is specific to a different bacteria. So you would have, if you just got the flu shot, you would have created plasma B cells temporarily against that flu. Um, but really, what's happening is then you create memory B cells that last somewhere on the order of like 50 to 80 years um, in your body, so that if you get that same flu ever, infection, your body will respond very quickly, um, and the memory B cells will tell the body to produce their cousin, plasma B cells, and those will produce a bunch of antibodies against the flu uh, bacteria. So there are five classes, so little flavors, and you can remember just the letters GAMED are gamed, um, and these are just different subtypes of antibodies uh, that are used in different parts of the body. So again, on first exposure to a pathogen, it activates B cells to form memory B cells. Again, you can think of this as either you got an infection the first time, or you can think of it as a vaccine that you're given. Um, and again, these memory B cells are formed. Then on second exposure, um, the memory B cells act more quickly uh, than, uh, than your typical immune response the first time. And their job is to tell the body to make these specific plasma B cells to that uh, uh, specific uh, bacteria, and those plasma B cells will make very efficient antibodies to that bacteria. Okay, so again, memory B cells remember, and then plasma B cells are the factories that create the antibodies. They do this through a number of methods. The antibodies can work through clumping the bacteria together, which is technically called agglutination. But if you know it as clumping, that's great. And then there's neutralization, which is usually in relation to toxins, um, and it can just neutralize a toxin in your blood, and that's something that a cell cannot do, a cell-mediated response can't do. Um, so here's again the picture of a B cell, and there are two types. So either it's going to be a plasma B cell or a plasma cell, or a memory B cell or a memory cell. And that um, so just keep that in mind. The plasma cell, you can see all these antibodies around it because it's producing all these antibodies that are going to go out and attach to the bacteria the memory B cell is just sitting there waiting to see uh, uh, a specific bacteria again. And that's it for this chapter. I hope this was helpful, and I'll be uploading the rest as I go along. Good luck.